Emily Carter stood in front of her sprawling mansion, the golden sunlight casting a warm glow on the meticulously manicured lawn that stretched out before her. The grand estate, with its ornate architecture and lavish gardens, was a testament to her family's wealth and social standing, but it felt more like a gilded cage than a home. She could hear the faint sounds of laughter and clinking glasses from inside, where preparations for her engagement party were already underway. Yet, despite the joyous atmosphere, a sense of unease settled in the pit of her stomach. Emily's engagement to Ryan Mitchell, a charming and handsome scion of one of the wealthiest families in the city, should have filled her with excitement. Instead, she found herself grappling with an unsettling truth. Their worlds, though seemingly aligned by their affluence, were starkly different. Ryan was a product of privilege, raised in a household where expectations were as high as the ceilings of their opulent home. The more time she spent with him, the more she realized that his view of love and relationships was often superficial, shaped by a society that valued status over substance. Taking a deep breath, she stepped back to survey the house one more time. The grandeur that surrounded her felt suffocating, a constant reminder of societal pressures and the expectations that came with her engagement. "Is this the life I truly want?" she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the sounds of celebration. She longed for authenticity, a connection that transcended wealth and status. But could she find that with Ryan? Or was she simply another trophy for his family to display? As if hearing her unspoken thoughts, Ryan appeared at the entrance, his smile bright and disarming. "Emily, come on, everyone is waiting for you," he called, his voice filled with enthusiasm. He was dressed impeccably, his tailored suit hugging his athletic frame. Emily felt a flutter of affection at the sight of him, but it was quickly overshadowed by her doubts. "Of course, Ryan. I'll be right there," she replied, forcing a smile as she followed him inside. The opulent foyer was filled with friends and family, the atmosphere electric with excitement. Yet, as she mingled, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider in a world that revolved around wealth and appearances. Later that evening, as she stood in the grand ballroom, surrounded by elegantly dressed guests, she overheard snippets of conversation that made her heart sink. The lavish engagement party was more than just a celebration. It was a performance, a display of their family's social standing. "Ryan has done well for himself, marrying someone from a good family," one of Ryan's aunts remarked, her tone dripping with condescension. "But we shall see if she can handle the pressure. The Mitchells have certain standards after all." Emily's heart raced as she forced herself to engage in conversation, nodding along to small talk while her mind wrestled with the implications of what she had just heard. Did they see her as mere decoration, a piece to enhance Ryan's status rather than a partner to share his life with? She felt a wave of resentment wash over her. This was not the love she had envisioned. It was a business arrangement cloaked in romantic pretense. As the night wore on, the chatter around her only grew more insistent, revealing deep-seated prejudices and expectations that made her skin crawl. "I hope she knows how to behave at the country club," one woman tittered, her eyes scanning the room as if appraising Emily's worth. "It's all about appearances, you know. If she doesn't fit in, it could be quite embarrassing for Ryan." Emily's cheeks burned with humiliation. She excused herself from the crowd, seeking solace in a quiet corner of the room. She leaned against the cool marble wall, her heart pounding in her chest. The weight of their judgment felt unbearable, a heavy cloak of expectations that threatened to suffocate her. In that moment, a plan began to form in her mind, ignited by a fierce desire to understand the world from a different perspective. What if she could immerse herself in the lives of those who served? Perhaps then she could uncover the truth about love, acceptance, and worth beyond the confines of wealth. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying, but it ignited a spark of hope within her. The following morning, with a resolute heart, Emily set her plan into motion. She needed a new identity, a way to step into the world she longed to understand. With the help of an old friend who worked in the hospitality industry, she began to craft a disguise. "You'll need a name, something simple," her friend suggested as they sifted through options. "How about Emma? It's approachable and has a nice ring to it." "Emma it is," Emily agreed, her heart racing with excitement and apprehension. She carefully selected a plain uniform reminiscent of a maid's attire, opting for simplicity over extravagance. As she looked in the mirror, she felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Would she be able to carry out this charade? Would she be seen as less than human, or would she discover a deeper truth about herself and those around her? The next day, she found herself in front of Ryan's family home, the grand estate looming before her like a fortress. A rush of adrenaline coursed through her veins as she approached the entrance, knocking lightly on the door. Her heart raced as she was greeted by the housekeeper, Clara, a stern-looking woman with sharp eyes that seemed to scrutinize Emily thoroughly. "What do you want?" Clara asked, her tone dismissive. "I'm here for the maid position," Emily replied, adopting a meek demeanor and forcing herself to look down at the floor. "My name is Emma." Clara raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Very well then. Follow me." As she stepped inside, Emily felt a sense of liberation wash over her. She was no longer Emily Carter, the wealthy fiancée. She was Emma, a nameless face among the staff. And in that anonymity, she hoped to discover the truth about Ryan's world, his family, and perhaps even herself. With every step she took inside the sprawling mansion, she felt a mix of trepidation and excitement. The world of the wealthy was a strange one, filled with secrets and unspoken rules. But Emily was determined to peel back the layers and see what lay beneath the surface. She had made her choice, and there was no turning back now. As Emily Carter stepped into the Grand Mitchell household for the first time as Emma, she felt a wave of nerves wash over her. The expansive foyer, adorned with opulent chandeliers and intricate moldings, felt like a world away from her modest upbringing. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of her purpose: to see the world through the eyes of those who served, to understand the dynamics of a family that seemed so perfect on the surface, yet was riddled with unspoken tensions. The house smelled of polished wood and a faint hint of lavender, a scent that felt both welcoming and alien. As she adjusted the simple black dress she wore, a uniform that felt more like a disguise than anything else, she caught a glimpse of herself in an ornate mirror. The reflection staring back at her was unfamiliar. The makeup was minimal, and her hair was neatly pulled back. She almost didn't recognize the woman who had chosen to step down from her pedestal. "Emma!" a sharp voice called from behind her. Emily turned to find Clara, the housekeeper, standing with her arms crossed, a frown etched deeply on her face. Clara was a middle-aged woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, her hair tied back tightly in a bun. "You're late. We have a lot to do before the family arrives home." "I'm sorry," Emily replied, forcing a smile to mask her anxiety. "I just started today, and I'm trying to get my bearings." Clara's eyes narrowed as she assessed Emily from head to toe. "You'll need to do better than that. This is not a place for slacking off. The Mitchells expect perfection, especially from their staff." Her tone dripped with condescension. "You're not at a country club anymore, Emma. This is a job." Emily swallowed hard, feeling the weight of Clara's judgment. "Understood. I'll work hard to meet their expectations." With a dismissive wave of her hand, Clara gestured for Emily to follow her. "Come along, I'll show you the ropes. First, we need to prepare the dining room for dinner. Mr. Mitchell is quite particular about his table settings." As they walked through the sprawling house, Emily's heart sank. Each room they passed was exquisitely decorated, showcasing the wealth that defined the Mitchell family. She felt small and insignificant, a mere shadow in a world that glittered with affluence. Clara continued to lecture her about the importance of maintaining appearances and the strict hierarchy that governed the household. "Remember, you are here to serve," Clara emphasized, her voice low but commanding. "The family does not want to be bothered with your personal troubles or opinions. Know your place." Emily nodded, suppressing her desire to argue. Who was she to challenge Clara's worldview? She had chosen this path to understand Ryan's family, to see the truth behind their polished facade. But the coldness in Clara's voice sent a chill down her spine. It was a stark reminder of the class divide that existed between them, one she was desperately trying to bridge. Once in the dining room, Emily began setting the table, her hands moving automatically as she focused on the task at hand. The crystal glasses sparkled under the chandelier, and the fine china was a stark contrast to the simple plates she was used to at home. As she arranged the silverware, she overheard muffled voices coming from a nearby room. Curious, she leaned slightly to hear better. "Can you believe she thinks she can fit in with us?" a woman's voice scoffed. "I mean, look at her. She's just a maid." Emily's heart raced. She recognized the voice as belonging to Ryan's mother, a woman whose elegance was matched only by her sharp tongue. "We need to ensure Ryan understands that he cannot settle for just anyone. He needs someone from a reputable family, someone who has been raised to know her place in society." "Exactly," another voice chimed in, possibly one of Ryan's sisters. "This engagement is a joke. What does she even bring to the table? Nothing but a pretty face." Emily felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment and anger. She wanted to storm into the room and confront them, to defend herself and share her truth. But the fear of losing Ryan and the precariousness of her situation kept her rooted in place. Instead, she returned to her task, her hands trembling slightly as she finished setting the table. Later that evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Emily's heart sank further. She moved gracefully among them, serving dishes and refilling glasses, all the while overhearing their conversations. They spoke of vacations in the south of France, of connections with influential people, and of the latest gossip in their privileged circles. It was a world so foreign to her own. She felt invisible, a mere spectre flitting between their lives, serving them but never truly seen. "Emma, could you be a dear and refill the wine?" Ryan's mother said, her tone clipped and dismissive. "Yes, of course," Emily replied, forcing herself to remain composed. As she poured the wine, she caught Ryan's eye across the table. He smiled at her, a warmth that momentarily dispelled her discomfort. But the smile quickly faded as he turned back to his family, engrossed in their conversation. "Did you hear about the new heiress in town?" Ryan's father said, a glint of interest in his eyes. "Her family is quite wealthy, and she's recently single. I'm sure she'd make a fine match for Ryan." Emily's heart plummeted at the words. The idea of Ryan with someone else, someone from his world, felt like a dagger to her chest. She forced herself to keep her expression neutral, but inside, turmoil brewed. It was becoming painfully clear that the Mitchells had no interest in her, that she was merely a placeholder in their plans for their son. Just as she finished serving dinner, she felt a presence beside her. It was Jake, Ryan's younger brother, who had been unusually quiet throughout the meal. He leaned in slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Don't let them get to you. They don't know what they're talking about." Emily was taken aback. "You heard that?" Jake nodded, his expression serious. "I can't stand it when they talk like that. It's as if they forget that people aren't defined by their bank accounts." His gaze softened as he looked at her. "I know what it's like to feel out of place in this family." "Really?" she asked, surprised by his candor. You seem so comfortable. He chuckled softly. Comfortable? Hardly. I'm always the one who questions our family's values, the one who gets scolded for not playing the part. He paused, looking thoughtful. But you, Emily, seem different. You're not afraid to challenge them, are you? Emily felt a flicker of hope at his words. Maybe not all of Ryan's family were as intolerant as his mother. I want to understand them, but it's hard when they regard me as nothing more than their maid, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake's expression grew serious. You deserve to be treated with respect. Just remember, not everyone in this family thinks that way. Some of us see beyond the surface. As the dinner continued, Emily and Jake exchanged glances, a silent understanding forming between them. While the rest of the family reveled in their wealth and privilege, they shared a bond rooted in their mutual frustrations with the family's expectations. In that moment, Emily felt a flicker of solidarity, a sense that perhaps she wasn't entirely alone in this gilded cage. After the dinner concluded, Emily retreated to the kitchen to clean up, her heart heavy with the weight of the evening's conversations. Clara was already there, tidying up with a practiced efficiency. The housekeeper's demeanor hadn't softened, but Emily sensed a shift too. Perhaps Clara was beginning to see her as more than just a maid. Don't take their words to heart, Clara said suddenly, surprising Emily. They're all talk. Just do your job, and soon enough, they'll forget about their little comments. Emily nodded, unsure if she believed Clara's words. Thank you. I'll try to keep that in mind. As she scrubbed the dishes, she couldn't shake the feeling of being caught in a web of expectations and prejudices. She had come here to understand Ryan's family, but the deeper she delved, the more complex their dynamics became. The glimmers of hope she felt with Jake were overshadowed by the harsh realities of the family's disdain. That night, as Emily lay in the small room provided for her, she pondered her next steps. She had to navigate this treacherous territory carefully, but her heart yearned for the truth. Ryan deserved to know who she really was, but at what cost? Would revealing her identity shatter the fragile connection they shared, or would it bring them closer together? She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her dual existence pressing down on her. The life she had known as Emily Carter felt like a distant memory, and the role of Emma was becoming increasingly complicated. Yet, as she drifted into sleep, she couldn't ignore the undeniable truth that surfaced. Understanding love and acceptance might require more than just wearing a different mask. It might demand unearthing the very foundations of her identity. Emma stood in the dimly lit hallway of the Mitchell household, her heart racing as she strained to hear the voices coming from the drawing room. She had just finished her chores and was about to retreat to the small quarters she now called home when she noticed the door slightly ajar. Curiosity gnawed at her, and she couldn't resist the temptation to eavesdrop on Ryan's parents, who were discussing something in hushed, urgent tones. "Lillian, we cannot let this continue," she heard Ryan's father, Mr. Mitchell, say, his voice tight with disapproval. "That girl is not suitable for our son. She's a maid, for heaven's sake. Do you really think our friends will accept this? We can't allow a lower-class girl to tarnish the Mitchell name." Emma's breath caught in her throat. The weight of his words crashed over her like a tidal wave. She had always known there were expectations surrounding Ryan, but hearing his father speak so disparagingly about her worth, made her stomach churn. It was as if a sharp blade had pierced through the facade she had constructed for herself. "David, you must understand," Mrs. Mitchell replied, her voice laced with anxiety. "Ryan is in love with her. He doesn't see the danger in this. We have to do something before it goes too far. We cannot allow him to make a mistake that could ruin his future." Emma felt a surge of anger. How could they speak so callously about someone they barely knew? Their disdain for her position as a maid was palpable, and the realization that they were plotting against her sent shivers down her spine. She pressed her ear closer to the door, desperate to catch every word. "We need to introduce him to someone more appropriate," Mr. Mitchell continued, his tone now conspiratorial. "There's the Anderson girl. She comes from a wealthy family and her father is a powerful businessman. If we can set up a meeting, perhaps we can steer Ryan in the right direction." Emma's heart sank further. They were planning to orchestrate a meeting between Ryan and another woman, all while she stood a few feet away, masquerading as someone else entirely. The betrayal of trust stung more than she anticipated. She thought of Ryan's genuine smile, the way his eyes sparkled when he spoke of their future together. He had no idea of the plans his parents were hatching against her. Suddenly, a noise from the kitchen snapped her back to reality. It was Clara, the housekeeper, bustling in her direction. Emma quickly stepped back, her heart pounding as she retreated to the safety of her small room. She needed to gather her thoughts, to process the weight of what she had just overheard. As she sat on the edge of her bed, Emma found herself wrestling with a storm of emotions, anger, fear, and a creeping sense of helplessness. The Mitchells' prejudices loomed larger than she had ever imagined, and the love she felt for Ryan was now drenched in uncertainty. Later that day, as Emma was washing dishes in the kitchen, Jake strolled in, his usual easygoing demeanor slightly dampened. He flashed her a quick smile, but Emma could see the concern etched on his face. "Hey, Emma, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Emma looked up, debating whether to share the burden of her knowledge with him. But Jake was different. He had always been kind to her, treating her as an equal rather than an inferior. "I overheard something today," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "About your parents and Ryan." Jake's expression shifted to one of alertness. "What do you mean? What did you hear?" Taking a deep breath, Emma recounted the conversation she had overheard, the plotting, the disdain. Jake's brow furrowed deeper with each word. "I knew they wouldn't be happy about Ryan being with someone like you," he said, frustration creeping into his voice. "They don't understand what love is. It's always about status for them." "Do you think Ryan knows?" Emma asked, anxiety creeping into her voice. "I mean, does he understand how his parents feel about me?" Jake shook his head. "He's a good guy, but he's also a bit oblivious when it comes to family dynamics. He wants to believe the best about everyone. I just hope he figures it out before it's too late." Emma felt a pang of sympathy for Jake. He was caught in the middle of his family's expectations and the reality of their toxic environment. "And what about you, Jake? How do you feel about all of this?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Honestly, I'm tired of it. Tired of living up to their expectations, tired of pretending everything is fine. I've had dreams, you know, but I can't seem to break free from their shadow." Emma looked at him, her heart heavy with empathy. "You deserve to chase your dreams, not be held back by their standards." Jake met her gaze, a flicker of something unspoken passing between them. "You and I aren't so different, Emma. We both want to break free from this suffocating world." The connection between them deepened in that moment as they both recognized the weight of their shared burdens. Emma felt a sense of camaraderie with Jake, a bond forged through mutual understanding and frustration. Later that evening, as the household settled into a hush, Emma found herself in the garden, moonlight spilling softly over the manicured lawns. It was a place of solace for her, a sanctuary away from the oppressive atmosphere of the house. She took a moment to breathe in the cool night air, trying to calm her racing thoughts. Just then, she heard footsteps approaching. Turning, she saw Ryan, his expression brightening as he spotted her. "Emma, what are you doing out here all alone?" he asked, his voice warm and inviting. "I just needed some fresh air," she replied, forcing a smile despite the turmoil within her. Ryan stepped closer, concern etching his features. "You've seemed a bit off lately. Is everything okay?" Emma hesitated, her heart pounding. Here was the man she loved, standing before her, completely unaware of the storm brewing around their relationship. "I'm fine, just adjusting to everything, I suppose." He reached out, gently touching her arm. "You know you can talk to me, right? I want to be there for you." The sincerity in his voice tugged at her heartstrings, but the weight of her secret loomed heavily. "I know, Ryan. I appreciate that more than you realize." He smiled, and in that moment, Emma felt a flicker of hope. Maybe they could navigate through the thorns of their situation together. But as he leaned closer, his eyes searching hers for an answer, she was once again reminded of the chasm that lay between them, the truth that could shatter everything they had built. "Emma," he began, his voice dropping to a softer tone, "I really care about you. I feel like we can conquer anything together." The sincerity of his words made her heart ache. But how could she tell him the truth? How could she risk losing the love she had fought so hard to understand? She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. Instead, she found herself caught in a moment of silence, the weight of the world pressing down on her. As they stood there, the stars twinkling above, Emma felt the pull of their connection, yet the shadows of deceit loomed large. She was living a lie, and every heartbeat felt like a reminder of the truth she was desperately trying to hide. The night of the lavish party arrived, and the grand estate glimmered under a cascade of lights, illuminating the meticulously manicured gardens and the opulent facade of the Mitchell family home. Emma, still navigating her role as a maid, felt the weight of the evening's tension pressing down on her. She moved gracefully among the guests, her heart pounding as she caught glimpses of Ryan mingling with the elite. The air was thick with laughter and the clinking of crystal glasses. But beneath it all, she sensed a brewing storm, one that would challenge the very fabric of her existence in this world. As she passed through the crowded ballroom, Emma overheard snippets of conversation that only fueled her resolve. The guests were discussing the Mitchell family's plans for Ryan, particularly the introduction of a wealthy heiress who had just returned from Europe. "She's perfect for him," one woman said with a gleeful laugh, her voice dripping with condescension. "Her family has old money, unlike, well, you know." Emma's stomach twisted at the implications. She had to warn Ryan about the manipulative schemes of his parents, but deep inside, she feared how he would react. Would he believe her? Or would he dismiss her, as he had done before when she tried to voice her concerns? With each passing moment, the stakes grew higher, and the pang of desperation surged within her. As the evening progressed, Emma caught sight of Clara, the snobbish housekeeper, directing the staff with an iron fist. Clara's eyes narrowed as she spotted Emma, and a sneer crept across her face. "Make sure the champagne is perfectly chilled, Emma," she commanded, her tone dripping with disdain. "We wouldn't want to embarrass the family in front of their illustrious guests." "Yes, Clara," Emma replied, forcing a smile as she turned away. She could feel the fire of determination igniting within her. If there was ever a time to act, it was now. She had to confront Ryan and reveal what she knew about his family's plans. After what felt like an eternity, Emma finally spotted Ryan laughing with a group of guests near the grand piano. His eyes sparkled with joy, completely unaware of the shadows lurking in the corners of his family's intentions. Taking a deep breath, she steeled herself and approached him, her heart racing. "Ryan," she said softly, trying to catch his attention amidst the festivities. He turned, his smile fading slightly as he noticed the urgency in her voice. "Emma, you look lovely tonight. How are you?" "I need to talk to you," she said, glancing around to ensure they wouldn't be overheard. "It's important." Ryan raised an eyebrow, concern washing over his features. "What's wrong? Is it about the party?" "Yes," she replied, her voice lowering. "I overheard your parents discussing their plans to introduce you to someone tonight. They want you to meet a wealthy heiress." Ryan's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "What? That's ridiculous! I'm engaged to you, Emma. They wouldn't dare!" "But they are," she pressed, her heart pounding in her chest. "I've seen how they treat me, how they talk about you. They don't want you with someone like me. They think I'm not good enough for you." "Don't say that," Ryan said, his voice firm yet soothing. "You're more than enough. My feelings for you are real." "But your parents don't see it that way," she insisted, desperation creeping into her tone. "I need you to understand that they're plotting against us. They want you to be with someone from their world, someone they can control." Ryan shook his head, disbelief flickering in his eyes. "Emma, you're being paranoid. My parents want what's best for me. They wouldn't go that far." "But they already are," Emma exclaimed, the frustration bubbling over. "You have to trust me on this. I've seen their disdain. I've felt it. You deserve to know the truth about them." He hesitated, his brow furrowing as he processed her words. "What do you suggest I do? Confront them?" "Yes!" "Yes, you should," she urged, her heart racing. "But you need to be careful. They're manipulative, Ryan. They'll stop at nothing to keep you in their grasp." Ryan looked torn, his loyalty to his family battling with his love for her. "I'll talk to them, but I need you to promise me that you won't worry. We'll figure this out together." As he spoke, Emma felt a flicker of hope, but it quickly dimmed as she recalled the reality of their situation. "I'm afraid it's not that simple," she said softly. "I've seen the lengths they'll go to protect their image, to control your choices." Before Ryan could respond, a commotion erupted nearby, drawing their attention. Clara was animatedly directing the staff, barking orders as guests began to mingle more freely. Emma's stomach churned at the thought of the evening spiraling out of control. "I have to go," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "but please promise me you'll be cautious." "I promise," Ryan replied, though his expression remained conflicted. "I'll talk to them, Emma." As she stepped away, Emma felt a heavy mixture of dread and determination settle in her chest. She had to find a way to expose the true nature of Ryan's family. If she could gather proof of their manipulative behavior, perhaps Ryan would finally see the reality of his situation. With a newfound sense of purpose, she began to think of ways to gather the information she needed. The thought of recording conversations crossed her mind, but that idea felt risky. She had to tread carefully, ensuring she remained undetected in her quest for the truth. As the night wore on, Emma observed the interactions around her, keenly aware of every word spoken. She moved through the crowd, her heart racing as she caught snippets of gossip and veiled remarks about the heiress meant for Ryan. Each comment stung like a bee, further solidifying her resolve. "Did you see how they're pushing for a match?" one guest remarked, laughter in her voice. "Such a shame about that little Maid. She'll be out in no time." Emma clenched her fists, her heart heavy with the weight of their disdain. They had no idea of the truth that lay beneath the surface. As the evening approached its climax, Emma slipped away from the main gathering, seeking refuge in a quieter corner of the estate. She leaned against a wall, taking a moment to breathe and gather her thoughts. The sounds of laughter and music echoed in the background, but all she could focus on was the path ahead. Her mind raced with ideas, and she knew she had to act quickly. She needed to find a way to gather evidence of the Mitchell family's schemes, something tangible that would prove to Ryan the lengths his parents would go to maintain their reputation. With each passing moment, her determination grew. She would not let Ryan be a pawn in his parents' game. She would expose the truth, no matter the cost. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, envisioning a plan where she would catch them in the act, forcing them to confront their own manipulations. As she opened her eyes, she felt a surge of purpose. She could do this. She had to. The evening's festivities continued around her, but within her, a storm was brewing. A storm that would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, family, and the lengths one would go to for acceptance. In that moment of clarity, Emma resolved to take control of her destiny, to seize the opportunity to reveal the truth about Ryan's family. She would gather the evidence she needed, and by doing so, perhaps she could finally carve out a place for herself in Ryan's world, one based on honesty, love, and understanding, rather than the shadows of deceit that surrounded them. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn of the Mitchell estate, Emma, still disguised as the maid, stood in the dimly lit kitchen. Her heart raced as she reviewed the plan she had meticulously crafted to expose the manipulative nature of Ryan's parents. She could hardly believe that she had come to this point, hiding her true identity while collecting evidence against the very family she was supposed to join. With her phone tucked discreetly in her apron pocket, Emma waited for the right moment. Her pulse quickened at the thought of capturing the truth on record. The clinking of fine china and the muffled laughter from the dining room reminded her of the world that existed just beyond the kitchen door, one filled with privilege and pretense. She took a deep breath, steadying herself as she heard the familiar sound of Ryan's parents, James and Linda, talking in hushed tones. "James, we can't let him get too serious about her," Linda said, her voice laced with urgency. "What if he decides to go through with the wedding? She's not suitable for him." Emma edged closer to the door, her heart pounding as she pressed the record button on her phone, the device now capturing every word. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. It was one thing to suspect their intentions, it was another to hear them openly plotting against the very woman their son loved. "Exactly," James replied, his tone cold and calculating. "We need to show him that there are better options out there. Wealthy families who can elevate his social standing, not this charade." Hearing the disdain in their voices stirred a mix of anger and sadness within Emma. She had known about their expectations, but hearing them speak so callously about her made it all the more real. She could feel her resolve hardening. She would not let them dictate her future with Ryan. "Perhaps we can arrange a meeting with that heiress from the Collins family," Linda suggested. "She's perfect for him, and her family has connections that can open doors for our son." "Let's do it," James said. "I'll have my assistant set it up. We need to act quickly." As they continued discussing their plans, Emma felt a surge of determination. She would not let Ryan be pulled into their web of manipulation. Once she had all the evidence she needed, she could confront him and show him the truth about his family. With her heart still racing, Emma slipped back into the kitchen, her mind racing with thoughts of how to present this information to Jake. He had become her ally in this tumultuous journey, someone who understood the weight of their family's expectations and had shown her glimpses of kindness amidst the coldness of the Mitchell household. Later that evening, after the dinner service had ended and the family retreated to the drawing room for after-dinner drinks, Emma found a moment of quiet. She texted Jake, urging him to meet her in the small garden at the back of the estate. When he arrived, the moonlight illuminated his features and Emma felt a sense of relief wash over her. "Jake, I have something important to show you," she said, her voice low and urgent. "What is it?" he asked, his brow furrowed in concern. She pulled out her phone and played the recording, watching Jake's expression shift from curiosity to disbelief as he listened to his parents' plans. "I can't believe this," he muttered, shaking his head in shock. "They're really going to try to break you two apart?" "Yes. They think I'm not good enough for Ryan," Emma replied, her voice tinged with emotion. "But I can't let them do this. I need to confront him, but I don't know how he'll react once he hears this." Jake ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. "We need to tell him together. He deserves to know the truth about his parents and what they're planning. If he loves you, he'll want to fight for you." Emma nodded, feeling a mix of fear and hope. "You're right. I just hope he believes us. He's so wrapped up in wanting to please them." "Then we'll show him what they're really like," Jake said, determination lighting up his eyes. "Let's catch them in the act if we can." As they plotted their next steps, Emma felt a sense of camaraderie with Jake that she hadn't expected. He was more than just Ryan's brother. He was a kindred spirit, someone who understood the weight of family expectations and the burden of privilege. Together, they could confront the truth, and maybe, just maybe, they could save Ryan from his family's manipulation. The following day, Emma awoke early, the dawn light spilling into her small room. Today was the day she would reveal her true identity to Ryan. She had spent sleepless nights wrestling with the decision, but she knew that honesty was the only way forward. Their relationship deserved that much, even if it meant risking everything. As she prepared for the day, she could feel the butterflies in her stomach intensify. She had been Emma for long enough. It was time to reclaim her true self. She dressed carefully, choosing a simple yet elegant outfit that reflected who she truly was, not just the guise she had worn for the past several weeks. When she entered the living room that morning, Ryan was seated on the couch, a newspaper spread across his lap. He looked up and smiled at her, that warm, genuine smile that had captivated her from the beginning. "Good morning, Emma. How did you sleep?" "Morning, Ryan," she replied, forcing a smile despite the anxiety swirling within her. "I slept well, thank you." As they exchanged small talk, Emma felt her heart race. How could she turn this moment into the conversation she needed to have? Just then, Jake entered the room, his expression serious. "Ryan, can we talk for a moment?" Jake said, his tone brokering no argument. Ryan looked between them, a hint of concern crossing his face. "Sure, what's up?" "Can you meet us in the garden?" Emma asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. She needed to do this outside, away from the prying eyes of their parents. "All right," Ryan replied, standing up and following them outside. Once in the garden, where the scent of blooming flowers filled the air, Emma took a deep breath. Jake nodded at her encouragingly, and she knew it was time. "Ryan, there's something I need to tell you, something important." Ryan's brow furrowed. "What is it? You're starting to worry me." "Before I say anything, you need to know that I care about you deeply," Emma began, her voice shaking slightly. "But I've been living a lie. My name isn't Emma. It's Emily Carter." For a moment, silence hung heavily in the air, the weight of her revelation sinking in. Ryan's eyes widened in shock, confusion swirling within them. "Emily? The Emily Carter? The one I've heard about from my parents?" "Yes," she said, her heart pounding in her chest. "I've been working here undercover because I wanted to understand your world and your family. I wanted to see if love could truly exist outside of wealth and status, but I've uncovered something far darker." "Darker?" Ryan echoed, searching her face for clarity. "Your parents don't want us together. They think I'm not suitable for you. I overheard them plotting to keep us apart," Emma explained, glancing at Jake for support. "Is this some kind of joke?" Ryan's voice was a mixture of disbelief and hurt. It's not a joke, Ryan. I have recordings. They want to introduce you to someone else, someone they deem worthy of you, Emma continued, her heart aching at the pain in his eyes. Jake stepped forward, his expression earnest. Ryan, we believe in you and Emma. You deserve to know the truth about your family. They're manipulating you. Ryan's expression shifted, anger beginning to surface. You've been lying to me this whole time? You've been playing a role in my life? No, I wasn't trying to deceive you, Emma pleaded. I needed to understand everything, your family, our relationship. I care about you more than anything, and that's why I had to tell you this. The tension in the garden thickened, and Emma held her breath, waiting for Ryan's reaction. Would he understand? Would he choose to stand by her side against the family that sought to keep them apart? Why didn't you just tell me from the start? Ryan's voice was strained, filled with hurt. Because I was scared, Emma admitted, tears brimming in her eyes. I was scared of what you would think of me. I didn't want to lose you. Ryan's gaze softened, but the hurt remained. And now? What do you think I'll do? Whatever you choose, I'll understand, she said, her voice breaking. But please don't let them dictate your happiness. As silence enveloped them, Emma felt a flicker of hope. She had taken the plunge, laid bare her heart, and now it was up to Ryan to decide their fate. Would he stand by her, or would the chains of familial obligation bind him too tightly to break free? Emma held her breath, waiting as the world around them faded into a distant hum. The only thing that mattered was the man standing before her and the love she hoped would prevail. Emily stood in the dimly lit hallway of the Mitchell household, her heart racing as she clutched the edge of her apron. The air was thick with tension, and she could feel the weight of the secret she was about to unveil pressing down on her. Just moments before, she had resolved to reveal her true identity to Ryan, to confess that she was not the maid he believed her to be, but Emily Carter, the woman he loved. However, the moment was interrupted by the sound of hushed voices drifting through the partially open door of the family study. Curiosity piqued, she leaned closer, her breath hitching in her throat. I had to do what was necessary, Margaret, she heard Ryan's mother, Mrs. Mitchell, saying in a voice laced with regret. You know how the family operates. We cannot allow someone like her to tarnish our name. Emily's heart sank. She didn't want to believe what she was hearing. The words hung in the air, heavy with implications. She pressed her ear closer to the door, straining to catch every word. You mean to say that you would have gone through with it? Margaret's voice was incredulous. You would have separated Ryan from the woman he loves simply because of her background? It's not just about love, dear. It's about status, legacy. You know that better than anyone, Mrs. Mitchell replied, her tone defensive yet tinged with a hint of vulnerability. You think I wanted to hide this from him? I did it to protect him. Emily's heart raced as she realized that Mrs. Mitchell was referring to a secret that could shatter not only her world but also Ryan's. What could be so important that it warranted such drastic measures? Protect him from what? Margaret pressed. From the truth or from his own heart? You've been living a lie, Clara. Don't you see? This could very well backfire on you. Silence filled the room, and Emily's mind raced. She had spent the last few months concealing her own truth, crafting a disguise and a life that allowed her to understand the world around her. But now, she was confronted with the reality that perhaps she was not the only one with a hidden identity. The thought sent shivers down her spine. Ryan is a good boy, Mrs. Mitchell finally said, her voice cracking. He deserves someone who can elevate his status, not drag him down. I couldn't bear to see him suffer because of a mistake I made long ago. Emily's heart twisted in her chest as she pondered the implications of Mrs. Mitchell's words. What was the mistake that had haunted her for so long? The question loomed large in her mind, and she felt a surge of empathy for the woman she had once viewed as an antagonist. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and Emily froze. Ryan emerged, his expression a mixture of confusion and concern. "Mother, what are you doing here?" he asked, glancing back into the study where his mother remained hidden from view. I just wanted to talk to you, dear," she stammered, her voice betraying a hint of panic. "About your engagement. It's important." Emily's heart raced as she realized that she was standing at a crossroads. She could continue eavesdropping, unraveling the secrets of Ryan's family further, or she could step into the light and confront the truth of her own identity. "Emma?" Ryan's voice cut through her thoughts, and she turned to see him looking directly at her. "What are you doing here?" Caught off guard, she hesitated, the weight of her disguise heavy on her shoulders. I was just cleaning," she stammered, forcing a smile that felt strained. "I didn't mean to intrude." Ryan's brow furrowed, and he stepped closer, concern etched across his features. "You look pale. Is everything all right?" "Of course," she replied too quickly, her heart racing. But his gaze pierced through her facade, and she felt vulnerable, exposed. She wondered if he could sense the tumult within her. "Listen, Emma," Ryan said, his voice softening. "You can talk to me about anything. I want to be there for you." The sincerity in his eyes made her heart ache. How could she bring herself to shatter the illusion they had built together? The weight of her decision pressed heavily upon her, and she felt as if she were teetering on the edge of a precipice, ready to plunge into the unknown below. As she opened her mouth to speak, the door to the study swung open, revealing Mrs. Mitchell. "Ryan, we need to have a serious discussion," she said, her tone grave. Emily felt her heart drop. This was not the moment she had envisioned. "I should go," she murmured, stepping back. "No," Ryan said firmly, his eyes darting between his mother and Emily. "You stay right here. Whatever it is, we can handle it together." Emily's heart thudded painfully in her chest. The weight of the moment felt unbearable. She wanted to scream, to tell him everything, to share the truth of who she really was and what she had discovered about his family. "Mum, what's going on?" Ryan pressed, his frustration evident. Mrs. Mitchell glanced at Emily, her expression shifting from one of annoyance to something resembling sorrow. "It's not the time, Ryan. You need to focus on your future, not on distractions." "Distractions?" Emily echoed, her voice trembling. "Is that what I am to you?" "Emma, I didn't mean—" Mrs. Mitchell began, but Emily cut her off. "No, you're right. I'm nothing but a distraction in your carefully curated world," she said, her voice rising with emotion. "But I was never meant to be anything else. I was just a maid, right?" Ryan's face contorted in confusion. "What are you talking about?" Before she could respond, Mrs. Mitchell stepped forward, her face pale. "Ryan, please. This isn't the time." But it was exactly the time. This was the moment when everything could change. The truth hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. "I can't do this anymore," Emily said, her resolve hardening. "I've been hiding behind this facade, pretending to be someone I'm not. And I'm tired of it. I came here to learn about love and acceptance, but all I found is fear and judgment." "Emily, wait," Ryan started, but she took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. "I'm not Emma," she declared, her voice steady. "I'm Emily Carter, and I love you, Ryan. I've loved you from the very start, but I felt that I needed to understand who I was without all of this." She gestured at the opulence surrounding her, the very wealth that had felt like a prison. The room fell silent, and Emily could see the shock washing over Ryan's face, But before she could continue, Mrs. Mitchell stepped in front of her, desperation in her eyes. "Ryan, listen to me," she said, her voice trembling. "What she's saying, it's not what you think. I've made mistakes, and I've tried to protect you from the truth." Emily's heart raced as the words hung in the air, an invitation to uncover even deeper secrets. But she was done waiting for the truth to surface. She was ready to confront it head-on, no matter the consequences. "Ryan," she said, her gaze locking with his, "you deserve to know everything. You deserve to know who I am and who your family really is. Please, let me show you." And in that moment, as time seemed to stand still, she took a deep breath, preparing to unveil the tapestry of lies and truths that had woven their lives together in unexpected ways.